Chapter 3. The Last Supper. Dinner was Mom's fragile miracle. 6 plates steaming under the flickering fluorescence on Rue Chambéry. A fractured family of 6, hunched tight, her hands coaxing life from scraps. Gyro meat dripping with tzatziki, spanakopita layered flaky and sharp with feta, roasted potatoes spiked with oregano, a spread to hold us. Me, Krista, Graham, Bailey, Mom, and the monster hulking at the head. She'd cooked it slow, aprons streaked with olive oil, her donkey shuffle dragging through the kitchen, a shaky thread to stitch us together for one holy hour. The air hung thick with garlic and lemon, dill cutting through the rot like a thin veil against the hell festering at the table's end. I was 10, fork gripped too tight to eat, white and black irisons scuffing the tile, starving for 5 bites. 5 measly fucking bites before Jerry turned it to ash. His rage crept in quiet, a damp rot seeping through the cracks. His gospel was a poison we couldn't spit out. I knew it was coming, like Christ knew the cross waited, the torture, the nails, the betrayal. But we broke bread anyway, hearts pounding, because what else could we do? The table was our Gethsemane, and Jerry was Judas and Pilate fused, selling us out, sentencing us, his Super Bowl ring glinting like 30 pieces of silver. A warped Last Supper. There was no savior here, just us as the sheep, throats slit for sacrifice. His fury was the blade sinking deep. We were the lambs, not Christ, and his rage was the nails driven deep, past the skin, into our souls. What kind of shit did you stir up today, Graham? 6'2", 250 pounds slouched over his plate, Super Bowl ring flashing as he tore into Gyro meat, grease slicking his chin-strapped jaw, spit flecking the table. 5 bites, tzatziki still tangy on my lips, and he'd ramp up, slow, deliberate, a fuse burning down. You'll end up bums, rotting on the street, your mother's fuck-ups to thank. His voice started to swell, veins pulsing on his forehead, a tidal wave crashing past our peeling walls, his dull eyes fading to black by 1,000 helmet hits glinting wild, saliva arching like venom, a storm we couldn't crawl out from. I'd flick my eyes to Krista, 8 with quivering pigtails and a stalled fork, Graham, 12, with a rigid jaw, Bailey, 6 years old and already a smudge melting into her chair. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her napkin. All of us were nailed to the cross he'd hammered together, his words pounding stakes through our palms, our blood pooling where Christ's was supposed to be. This wasn't communion. Christ's blood didn't spill for us. Ours leaked slow, a sick ritual, the food turning to stone as he roared. You're nothing. You never, mark my words, never will be. His sermon scorched the fading paint of the kitchen walls. I'd stare at the window, picturing the neighbors' lights. Someone hear this. Call the fucking cops. Drag us out of this pit. The canyon swallowed it all, their ears plugged, our screams left muted. Jerry was untouchable, an NFL legend, a community god. His psychopath smile was a shield, 6'2" of faded glory nobody dared touch, even as his bellows shook the glass-plated door. The walls trapped us, not him. Krista's breath caught frozen, Graham's fists whitening, grasping at nothing. Bailey's eyes blank. My pulse hammered like a trapped animal while he loomed, his chair screeching back, the Judas Pilate mashup selling us out, sentencing us, leaving us gutted when he'd had his fill. Jesus hung for hours. We dangled every night, the cross Jerry lashed to our spines, a daily slog to this table where Mom's feast was the broken body, not for grace, but for his fists. I'd sit there, fork twisting in my grip, staring at the knife block by the sink. One slice, right across his throat. End this shit for good. Blood for blood, his this time, not ours. The thought burned like a slow drip of acid in my gut. Could I do it? 10 years old, hands too small, but fuck, I'd try. I'd picture the blade catching the fluorescent glare, his gurgle drowning out the sermon, his virulent blood washing over Mom's feasts, our Last Supper. I pictured Mom gasping in shock, finally relieved, Krista's eyes widening, surprised, but finally calmed. But I'd freeze, every time, the weight of it sinking me deeper. He'd win anyway, even dead, his ghost laughing, still tormenting this same table. The knife stayed put, useless, like me. He'd wind down once his voice was raw, plate half touched, as the storm faded and he lurched off, leaving us in the rubble. The tzatziki congealed, spanakopita soggy, potatoes cold, our wounds gaping, fresh and raw. Mom would scrape the plates. Her silence was a wall we'd hate her for, that faint light in her flickering against the black dumped on us, a mule mopping up the blood, hers, ours, never his. I'd sit with a fork bent to shit in my fist, 10 and already bleeding out, Krista's eyes pooling, Graham staring blank, and Bailey, a ghost behind her baby blues. All of us crucified kids, strung up until the next last meal. The neighbors stayed deaf. The cops were still a call away, and Jerry's gospel was the only sound ricocheting through the canyon. Read my fucking lips when I say this. You're nothing. I'd hear it in my sleep, seeping into nightmares, feel it in my bones, the kitchen knife still calling like a whisper I couldn't answer. The pain was a slow bleed we'd simmer in, night after night, no resurrection in sight. His voice looped in my head, convincing me I was worthless, that at just 10 years old I had already done enough, or not done enough in his eyes, to be considered a failure. Krista, Graham, Bailey, Mom, we were all shrinking, learning to hate ourselves because that's what emotional abuse does. It's not just the bruises you can't see, it's the way it rewires you to believe you are the problem, that his rage was our fault, that we'd never be enough to escape the cross he'd nailed us to. The worst part was the silence that followed, the way his storms left us stranded in our own heads, too scared to trust each other, too broken to fight back. We'd all lay down at night in a sprawling 6-bedroom house, all sleeping under the same roof, but we were alone, deeply alone in the depths of our tiny little personal hell. Jerry taught me that love was fragile, something you could lose if you weren't good enough, and Jerry made damn sure we never were. That fear clung to us, a suffocating weight. You start to flinch at loud voices. You doubt every kind gesture from a stranger. I sat in my bed at 10 years old, wondering if anyone could see us as more than the nothing he screamed. It was a loneliness that burrowed deep, a feeling that the world outside Rue Chambéry would never understand the war we fought just to eat dinner. His abuse scraped out our insides until we were shells, too brittle to dream of anything that looked like hope. His voice didn't just shake the glass. It burrowed into me, a weight that crushed my chest and flattened my entire belief system. I barely knew anything about the world. I was too young to understand, but I knew the knot in my stomach. I knew the way my hands trembled before we sat down, the way I'd lie awake sleepless, heart pounding, waiting for his next sermon. You learn to live with the constant anxiety of being around a man whose rage could flare or charm without warning, a sociopath who made safety feel like a trap he was setting. Some nights I felt nothing, a gray fog swallowing my hope, depression settling in. Surviving him, living through the next day, meant enduring a world where joy was a lie. His affairs made it worse, a betrayal that said we weren't enough, that our family was a stage he could walk off. You start to feel utterly powerless, like no one could ever hear your screams. So you stop trying, let the silence of your voice settle in. That helplessness stuck, a whisper that I'd never escape. His abuse wasn't just ours, it was a curse we'd fight to unlearn, a shadow our kids might feel if we didn't break it. I'd lie in bed and think of the flashes of TV families like Full House or Home Improvement. Dads like Danny Tanner, warm and understanding, not demons. Their dinner tables were alive with laughter, stories of school, frisbee golf and PE, not sermons that burned the air. I knew that world existed, but it was a fantasy, a cruel mirage against the bleakness of Rue Chambéry. Here, dinner was a daily battle. I'd pretend to be asleep in my room when Mom called us down for dinner, my heart pounding, praying I'd dodge his lecture. Then I'd hear the bark. "Garrett, get your ass down here, you disrespectful shit. Your mom is calling you." The scariest part was never knowing what would set him off. A spilled glass, looking at him wrong, but most times it was nothing at all. Jerry's sociopathy was a void, no empathy in those dull eyes, no memory of the night before when he'd roared about us being destined for failure. He forgot, but we'd carried it. We all flinched at his voice, numb to the venom until he'd slam his fist on the table, barking, "Look at me! You understand me? Then say it!" We'd choke out the words, "Dad," like it was acid on my tongue. A curse that tasted like betrayal. "Yes, Dad." The numbness was survival, a gray fog where hope dissolved. I couldn't focus on school, my worksheets stained with tears, history lessons lost to the ache of just getting through. His voice, "You're nothing," haunted me, made me believe I was the problem, that his rage was my fault, that I'd never be enough. It wasn't just bruises, It was a wound that never closed, a loneliness that burrowed deep, convincing me that the world outside this table would never see us as more than the failures he'd named. We were alone, each of us, Krista, Graham, Bailey, Mom, trapped in our tiny hells under one roof, too scared to trust, too broken to dream. I'd stare at the ceiling, knife block glinting in my mind, and wonder if anyone could ever pull us from this dark. Mom's faint light flickered, but it was too dim, too fragile to guide us out. All I had was the weight of his words, a cross I carried, a boy already burying himself under the truth that love was a lie and survival was all I'd ever know. Living under his rage was like carrying a wound that never closed, slow, dripping blood that stained everything, our hopes, our futures, even the rare moments we'd laugh. We grew up with his voice in our bones, second-guessing every step. We were afraid to shine because he taught us that light was a lie. We were cursed. We bore the scars, marked by a man who turned Mom's fragile miracle into a crucifixion. The knife block still glinted in my mind, a fantasy of fighting back. But emotional abuse doesn't just break you. It tricks you into thinking you're too weak to swing. We were kids, but we were already burying ourselves, night under night, under the weight of his words. I'd sit there, cross heavy against my back, picturing Christ breaking bread, knowing the nails of the crucifix waited. He persisted, and so did we. But for what? Salvation felt like a fairy tale. All I had was the weight of Jerry's gospel, a boy already sinking, praying someone, anyone, could pull us from the rubble.